Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. I have been on a massive texture phase lately and really enjoying experimenting with watercolor and a whole bunch of different materials and mediums, which made me think about a little exercise that I wanted to share with you where I create two mini abstracts and combine watercolor with things like stitching, fabric, different textural techniques like using bubble wrap and things like that. So this is a video that comes from my Modern Mixed Media course, and it's open for registration right now as this video comes out. So I wanted to mention that and give you a little bit of a peek inside. For this exercise, I'm working on an A5 sheet of watercolor paper. This is the Arches cold press paper, and I've torn it off a pad. And when I'm working on a small piece like this, I often use my pans rather than tubes because I don't need such a big quantity of paint, and these are really handy and accessible. So this is the Daniel Smith Jane Blundell Ultimate Mixing Set. I highly recommend this set. You can create so many colors with these paints, and I mix all my favorites, all those earthy tones, using this set. And I have my flower palette here as well, so I have a bit of mixing space. So to start off with, I'm going to begin by laying down some watercolor paint and using the straw. So I'm just going to mix up some colors in the palette. And you'll see that I just add things together. So if I see something and like a pink, for example, so let's say I take this is a quinacridone rose, I think, super vibrant. If I wanted that to be a little bit less vibrant, then I might add in one of the earthy colors. So, I might add a bit of the burnt sienna. I think that's burnt sienna. And maybe a bit of this one, just to get some different options. I love that gothite. It's such a gorgeous colour on its own. And just working my way around. That's probably enough there to get started. And of course you can just work straight out of the palette. I often do that as well. Straight out of here rather than using the mixing palette. Get my palette all messy. Whatever works for you. So let's get started. Got a bit of this colour in there too. So I'm going to begin by adding in some blobs. Just some random shapes. And then I'll tip the page and use the straw to blow them out. Let's start with blowing these ones and see how they go. Blow hard. Pop another area in here. Okay, let's blow these last two areas. Sounds funny to say that. Let's blow these. Here it is. You can see how I have allowed wet areas to butt up against other wet areas, and you've got these beautiful blends happening here. And there's a really good example just there where I pushed the gothite into that quinacridone rose colour. So you got some nice blends, and the blends in themselves add texture into your painting. Also using granulating paints such as the goethite, that will bring texture in. But today we are particularly interested in bringing in texture using other materials. So once this is dry, I'll be adding in some gold leaf in order to create another layer and another kind of area of interest. Let's leave this one to dry and then we can come back and add that layer. So for this sheet, I'll be doing something similar, but this time I'm going to use a few other textural ideas. So I'll be using the paper towel, the bubble wrap, and the sponge. So let's add in a shape. That's a really nice colour. I have no idea what's in it, but I love it. And that's generally how mixing for me goes. I just add things in and see what I come up with. So there's a nice area, nice wet area. And let's try the bubble wrap. So I'm just going to pop the bubble wrap over the top, let it sit there for a sec. I think it's probably not a bad idea to let it sit for a minute. So I'm going to work on another little area down here while I let that. It doesn't have to dry, but just to allow it to kind of semi-dry, because watercolour does dry quite fast. Okay, so let's go in with something else. And for this one, I think I'm going to use the sponge. See if I can get some of this colour onto the sponge as well. So this is a sea sponge. And nice soft texture there. Let's lift this up now. Ooh, now that is cool. That even has surprised me. How beautiful is that? If you were to leave this on to dry a bit longer, you might get a little bit more of an impression, so we might try that too. So I just realized it was cool, but then it all blended together. Let's try another shape. And try this again. So let's pop that on. I'm just going to leave it there a bit longer. So let's go in with another shape, just touching that colour up. So I'm putting the wet paint up against that deep, what would you call that? It's like a burgundy. It's beautiful. So let's grab the paper towel for this one. It will depend on what kind of pattern you have on your paper towel. This one has a wavy line. I'll pop it on that piece there. Just press down and lift. Well, that actually lifted a lot. So you can see the lines there. It's a nice delicate effect. Just gonna pop another little shape in here. And something else that you can do is, take some kind of tool. This is just a mixing, stirring tool. You just scratch that through the paint. Get a different kind of texture. So now I'll lift up the bubble wrap and we'll see what kind of texture we get this time. I did leave it on a bit longer. There we are. How cool is that? Yep, I get excited about these things. I'm just gonna pop one more shape. I feel like I need a shape there. So I'm gonna just mix up some remnants and pop in a little area here. So it's a good time now to leave this one to dry, and we've also got this one drying. And then what I'll do is come back and share with you a few more techniques that you can do once you have a layer of paint down. So there's going to be some stitching, some gold leaf, and some collage to come. So these two have completely dried, and I'll be beginning with adding some gold leaf onto this one. So I have this Montmartre leafing size, which is a glue that you use to adhere gold leaf. And the way that it works is that you apply it and then you need to leave it for a little while until it gets tacky, and then you come back and add the gold leaf over the top. So I've got a bit of the glue here and I'm just going to decide where I want some gold leaf. So I'm just going to continue with a fairly similar shape to what I've been doing. And then I'm also going to use a finer brush and maybe have some gold leaf. Okay, so that's one area. So I'll leave that to dry so I can get tacky. And I'll pop another bit of gold leaf in another spot as well. So I'm just in here. So I think that'll do for that. The amount of time that you need in order for gold leaf to get tacky enough depends on the brand that you are using. I would say this will need about 10-15 minutes. So I'm going to pop it, I'll just leave it there for the moment and I'll move on to this one. So it's handy to have a second piece to work on while that's getting tacky. For this one, I'll be adding in some acrylic paint using a palette knife. And I've chosen the Matisse Color Skin Tone Light. This is a flow paint, so it's not super heavy bodied. So you can see though that it has some body to it. And I might mix a little bit of this unbleached titanium into it as well. And now I'm going to use that over some of the areas on this painting. So it's going to provide beautiful textures that you get with the heavier bodied paint. Okay. So both of these now need a bit of drying time. So I'll leave them for 10-15 minutes and then come back so that we can add the gold leaf here. And I've got a couple of little things I want to add to this one as well. So this is now tacky. So I've got the gold leaf. So I'm going to take a sheet of this. So if you've never used gold leaf before, it's very delicate. It also goes everywhere, so be prepared to get little sparkles all over your room or on your face or wherever. So you just lay it down on the area where the glue is, and then you can just tap on it with something, like a brush. So. And then you can use your brush to get rid of the excess by just scrubbing. And it's as simple as that. So I'll just get rid of all the excess now. Get off my hands. And you can just use a dry brush to sweep off all the gold sparkles. And there you are. Clear up the work area. And so you can now see how that looks with the gold leaf added over the top. And for this one, I wanted to add in some collage elements. So I've got a little bit of rice paper here that I have added, I think it was watercolour into it. This is actually a leftover from my free class, which is called Abstract Collage Creations. So if you've taken that class, you might have some collage pieces too that you can use up. So I'm thinking about adding some of that, and I've also got a bit of cheesecloth here. Decide where we want it. You can see how that will add a whole nother textural element. So I have some regular gel matte medium, and that's what I'll be using to attach the collage pieces and the fabric. So this piece here, I'm just going to run somewhere around here. I'm just going to add some of that glue down, cover it all. And I'm going to add this piece here over the top. So for this one, I'm I'm just going to put glue on the back for this one. So just to make sure it has good coverage. And now I'm going to attach this over the top. Just press it all down. And the final thing that I want to add to this is a little bit of stitching. So I've unraveled my embroidery thread and I'm just going to cut off a section. And I'll just do a few stitches. See if we can thread it through. That's always the challenge. And you can probably hear in the background it started raining, so that one's fine. Now I am not a sewer by any stretch of the imagination, so if I can do this, anyone can. So I'm thinking it would be nice to have some that show up on this darker area. So I'm just going to press a hole through the page. There we go. Bring it through so the knot will hold it in place. And then just stab it through again to make random stitches. So there you are, there's the first stitch. And the great thing about this is that I reckon it looks great when you do it in a pretty haphazard kind of way. So I don't worry too much about where I'm putting my stitches. I just push it through and do stitches in a kind of not very regular pattern. Okay, I'm going to come down and work my way back. Okay. So I'm going to leave this one here. Of course, you could continue on and add a whole lot more stitching to it, which would be very fun, but it's not that interesting to watch. So I will just tie it off and cut the back. So I'm going to leave both of these here because the main thing I wanted to do was share with you some techniques, but you could of course do these on a much bigger scale and you could keep layering, adding more color, adding more stitching and build up even more texture into your paintings. So I've just popped these two side by side and I absolutely love all the texture in this one. You've got the cheesecloth, you've got the rice paper, the stitching, the bubble wrap, the sponge. But this one just feels like it needs something. So I've grabbed my trusty Posca paint pen in white. I'm just going to add a few little dots. A little bit of mark making to finish off. And of course you could keep on layering with these. These are just small examples, but you could keep on adding drips and do a much bigger painting, bigger collage. But the little ones are sweet too. It's a great way to try out different ideas to work on a smaller surface. So you could do a few studies and then decide what your favorite techniques are and maybe do a bigger one. I do love these little dots. I have to say it is a go-to mark making exercise for me. So there you are, 2 little studies that emphasize using texture. So I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson and it's given you some ideas of how you can bring more texture into your work as well.